So hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on qualitative findings to writing the conclusions. It's part of our webinar series, Organizing Your Writing from First Draft to Publishing. So excited for this one. And I'm going to just introduce myself before I introduce Veronica, our presenter, just so you know who I am in the background. So I'm Stacy Penna. I'm the Engagement and Enablement Director here at Lumavero, formerly QSR International. That's my email if you need to get in touch with me. And just so people know, we are recording this. You'll get the recording a couple days from now. Also, I'll add the handout to the chat in a little while. And feel free to type in questions at any time. So it's better for discussion purposes if you put in your questions about the topic in the Q&A area. And then if you just want to chat with people in the chat, but for questions for Veronica, that would be great. That helps me out in reading them. So with that, I just wanted to introduce our presenter, Dr. Veronica Richard, who received her PhD from the University of Northern Colorado in applied statistical research and research methods with I always say it's a cognate in reading. She has extensive training and experience in qualitative methods and in literacy. So welcome, Veronica. Thanks for being here. And right now you're with Dissertation by Design and also which has the Academic Writing Center.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
All right, I will end and stop sharing.
All right, well, we have a lot to cover today, so I will just get started. Let's see. When Stacy brought up the idea of this November presentation, I really started thinking about what is it that I haven't seen out there. And we see a lot of things on data analysis. We see a lot of things on, just data collection in general. But in moving from our findings to our conclusions, I haven't really seen a lot. So I thought maybe if we talked a little bit about that, we could start unpacking this very complex process. Stacy already introduced me, but I think what I want you to know most of all is that I love working with all my clients and my students and hearing all of your ideas and where you're heading and the contributions that you're making in research. So I'm excited. If you want to share some of those things in the chat, that would be awesome. Today, our objectives here are understanding the difference between findings and conclusions, understanding how to draw conclusions from our findings, and then learning how to support your conclusions in writing, and mostly, with your findings, but in writing. So what does that actually look like? And then explore how to position ourselves and our research through our conclusions and our discussions. Findings and conclusions. This is something that I realized that a lot of people get confused on. So I really wanted to stress this point. So the findings represent the data through patterns. They present the data through patterns in qualitative research. These patterns can be through themes or stories or things like that, but it's directly from the data and they're directly connected to our research design. So we'll discuss that a little bit. So themes, the thematic representation of the data I've seen all qualitative research designs use themes, can use these themes. And it is the most common form of patterns that we see in our findings section. Probably the next common, I would say, is stories or narratives. And this is specific to narrative research, testimonial, portraiture, platicas, case study phenomenology and ethnography, and there are many, many more designs out there that can draw on narratives. And actually what I mean here is not that I'm using stories to come up with themes, but rather I am gathering data to create stories or narratives, and that's how I present the data. And so there's a pretty important distinction there. Okay. And then the final aspect of the findings can also be about processes or actions. And in this particular pattern, we're really looking at grounded theory or deductive analysis based on theory. And we can talk more about that. Because of the time frame that we have today, won't go into this too much, but if you have any questions, I will certainly try to answer those after my portion of the presentation. Okay, the findings are connected to the research questions, but we are not answering our research questions per se. This is a big difference between quant and qual research. In quantitative research, we do answer the research questions in our findings chapter or our findings section. So this, I think, is where things get confusing. We might provide the research question to organize the themes that are related to that particular question, but it's not necessarily an answer to the question. Okay. Our findings are organized or representation of the data. So they are organized in a specific logical way, and that logical way has very much our intentional decisions throughout our analysis, and what is most important to present first, or what's logical to present first. All right, so now here's conclusion side. The conclusions are the answers to your research questions and how these answers align with past researchers' discoveries. Based on the patterns you've discovered and presented in the findings, that's how we come to our conclusions. Our conclusions are also, we can have many for each research question, or perhaps we only have one. I normally tell people if I have 4 research questions and it's a dissertation, I'm likely only going to have 1 or 2 conclusions for each question. But if I only have 1 research question, then I'm likely going to have 5 or 6 conclusions. Now, this number also depends upon the amount of data that I have. So just keep that in mind as well. All right. And then finally, our conclusions, we use our conclusions to situate our study among all the others that have happened prior to ours that are related to ours. Okay. All right. This is a source down here at the bottom that I found that I liked the most. I think it was most comprehensive for understanding what the conclusion chapter does. A lot of the other documents I found in my search were really talking about conclusions as like the end of a summary of a paper or something like that. This is not what conclusions in research are designed to do. They're really about answering those questions and about situating our study. Okay. So conclusions are explicit answers to the research questions. They go beyond the literal. And that means that we're being more inferential in our thinking. But that inference is informed. It's informed by our data and our natural reasoning processes. This evidence can also come from other researchers now that I'm thinking about this. Conclusions consist of a scholarly discussion about each conclusion. And we present the answer, we explain the data that goes with that answer or that's associated with it, and then we position ourselves within the other research. And I'll give you an example of this here in just a minute. This is where we connect to the findings and we illustrate how our study is similar to and different from other research. And this is where, think of your conclusions as you are now the expert. And this is such an exciting place to be. So if you are working on your conclusions, your final chapter, this is really you being one of the experts in the field, and that's an exciting place to be. Okay, so here are a part of an example organization of one's findings. Their themes are over here. This was actually a deductive study, and Dr. Valles used a well-being framework to organize his data. So that's three of the well-being components on the left-hand side for his themes. And then here are some sub-themes. And in this way, we're going to see how he moves from here to his findings. But I want to share a more detailed outline here that he sent me for this purpose. So hold on just one moment while I do a new share. Yeah. Here we go. So in this intellectual well-being, this is an NVivo printout. So now we see that how many references he has. So he has 2 effects of stress, problem solving and decision making, he has 4 references, hard decisions, he has 10. And then personnel, working decisions with personnel, he has 4. Public decisions, 6 more. Stressful decisions, he's got 10. And then weather and natural disaster, so decisions based on that are 6. And then we see 10 under professional education as well. So if we tally all these up, he's got quite a bit on this idea of decision making. So I wanted to share that with you so that you could see a little bit more of the transition now to where he goes in his conclusions. So in our conclusions, we're using our findings to arrive at a bigger picture. It is a cognitive process, and because of that, it is much more difficult for us to realize that we're making a cognitive act because it's invisible, right? Now, these are also realizations, and they can come during our analysis or after our analysis or both. And they can be reflective of findings within one theme or narrative or across themes. So let's see what Dr. Vales's conclusions were. So this is a table that I use with my clients and my students to start them thinking about their answers to their research questions. So you would put the answers over here, or excuse me, your questions over here. All right. And then as you're going, normally I start to think this when I'm in my data analysis. So if I am in my data analysis, then I can go into this middle column here and start to, now my drawing tool went off. Pardon me while I fix that. Okay, fine. So in the middle here, as you can see, we put our answers as we go. Okay, and this way, as we're going through our analysis, if we're thinking about things, we're like, oh my goodness, I think this is an answer. We can go ahead and put it in the table and hold on to it and hold on to the page number and where we were that caused us to think about the answer. And then we can come back to it so we don't interrupt our analysis too much. Okay. And then as we'll see over here in our positioning our conclusions, that's where we connect it to prior research. And I'm going to go over these two columns separately now. All right, so here is Dr. Velez's first research question. What meaning do superintendents make regarding well-being and their well-being experiences? So his answer is that the superintendent participants identified decision-making and work demands to be their biggest source of stress. So here we have the sentence in sharing experiences regarding their well-being. So that is the research question stem. Okay, so this is somewhat of a I guess, formula, if you will. So here's the stem, and then in the orange down here, then we see that I've covered that research question stem. I have my question and I have my participants here. This is really important in our writing as we're constructing it, okay? Then I include my answer, and my answer is in this teal color. The participants identified decision-making and work demands to be their biggest source of stress, all right? So now what do I have to do? I've got to provide evidence now for my findings to remind the reader. So I'm really just reminding my reader what I presented to them in chapter 4, okay? So let's see now what he says. So now I see his answer: making decisions under stressful situations can lead to bad decisions. So he's kind of adding on here to his conclusions and using the key words that he presented. This is also very important to do as we move into our writing. Then he gives specific examples here in the green. This is his evidence. Melvin highlighted feeling a fight or flight sense because these decisions are public and subject to scrutiny. Now, if you remember back in the outline I showed you, he had sections on public scrutiny. And this was, so he was really going across this theme and a couple of other themes to come up with this particular conclusion. And then finally, he adds more information about COVID-19 specifically. And I thought that this right here was actually really important because he doesn't stop. He shows what's important about his study, this aspect that it was conducted during COVID. And then again, he's still repeating some of his key words. Okay. Let's go ahead now and see what the other side looks like. Oh, I did this to show you how when he came up with this conclusion, he went across 3 different themes. Okay. All right, now we see his positioning his conclusion with all the others. The first thing that we do is provide our response. Our response about our conclusion up here. So his response is that, hey, it's not surprising, giving this large number of researchers who have discovered, okay? So, okay, it's not surprising. And now we see he connects to the prior research in this kind of reddish color here. And he's showing how they identified areas of interest, including work-life balance. This was important because of his connection to well-being here. And then down here, the very last thing after he continues to present information, right? And look at how he closes this particular claim here. I'm going to capture it here. With new mandates and policies piling up on administrator responsibility, it is no wonder superintendents often describe their work as having too much on their plate. Okay, now he's showing that he is now one of these researchers in here. And look at, he's the most recent one. It was 2022 2022 for his dissertation, or 2021, I think, 2021. And then in the end here, his last point is that even though the literature confirms this relationship between high work demands and decision-making and stress, it lacks the unique situational context of COVID-19. That right there is showing his position now within the research. He's the one researcher who has this specific contextual feature, which is different. Now he is the expert, one of the experts in this field. Okay. All right. So I guess that was my last page. I wanted to leave, Stacy, I wanted to leave you some time here because I know that you're going to show this through NVivo. But I think, I mean, it's a complex process. It seems like I'm making it too easy, but I do want people to know that it does take time, but actually this process is much quicker than our analysis. I normally tell people to gauge for about 4 weeks for our findings in qualitative research, depending on how much data you have, and about 2 weeks for writing up your chapter 5. Stacy, I think I forgot to send you, I have a handout with this on it that also has like the format for chapter 5. So I'll send that to you and you can send it to everyone for their.
If you, I think you can also upload in the chat.
Okay.
A document.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, try to do that and then they'll have it right away.
Perfect. Yes, I will go ahead and do that while you present. And then I'll just finish with this last slide here. The findings, remember, are your presentation of the data that relate to your research question. So it is, the focus is on the data. Your conclusions are the inferences or the answers to your research questions. And then you will likely construct some of your conclusions during your analysis and after. And then use a table to capture your thinking and use Citavi and NVivo to support your connections. And I believe that is it. Yes.
Great. Thanks, Veronica. Great. As always, we have a lot of positive comments and we'll take, feel free to keep putting questions. If you can put questions in the Q&A section of the Zoom for Veronica, that'd be great. It helps me. And I'm going to quickly, or not quickly, but I'm going to show you how you can use NVivo and Citavi to help with this process. And Veronica, chip in, if you want to say something while I'm doing the presentation too. So I'll just share my screen. So I'll start with NVivo, and what I did is I've created a project just to sort of explain how you can use NVivo for some of the concepts that and Citavi that Veronica mentioned. For people that are new to NVivo, I'll just take you on a little tour. You can see here, there's 3 sections in the blue navigation bar. So there's an import section, and this is where you're going to organize all your data. So here they brought in images in this project, interviews. You can, and I'll show you in a second how you can bring in literature from a reference management software like Citavi. They have surveys, and then here are your codes, a section where it's going to help you organize your codes, which is what Veronica was talking about in regards to like your themes. Cases are a way to organize your units of analysis, so who or what you're studying. And then we have an explore section that's all around queries and visuals to help you, look at your data in a deeper way. So what I did here is I created a folder under files for my literature. So, because part of getting to your findings and your conclusion, and I think some people wrote your discussion section, is you always need to know what's in the literature based on your research questions. So it's important to do all that. And I'm actually, let's see, because I did this earlier. No, I'll keep this. So, so what I would do is I'd organize my, and before I do that, I just realized I have slides that might put this in context better. So let me do that first. Just to give you a sense of how this will work with both softwares. So with Citavi, which I'll show you in a minute, it's reference management, but also a writing solution for you. And you can search through databases to find those references you need for your lit review. You can explore those references. You can find those key quotes and comments. One of the strengths of Citavi is you can create an outline to help you with starting your writing in your first draft. And then you can use NVivo, because I'll show you can import those references into NVivo to help you analyze for those key things you need to write about with your lit review. And then there's also ways to use Citavi to help with the first draft, bringing everything into a Word document. So I'll also show you that. Now, how Citavi and NVivo sort of work together is they're complementary. And so Citavi, you're really using it for your secondary literature. And then with NVivo, you're using it for your primary research data, whether it's focus groups, surveys, pictures, video, audio, whatever you're collecting. And they intersect here with literature review, collaboration, and taking notes. And I just did this. So Citavi, I'm going to show you how you can import references, build your writing outline, export Citavi project to NVivo, and then how you can use Citavi to help manage your citations and reference your bibliography. And then with NVivo, I'll show how you can organize your findings, like Veronica talked about, how you can import the Citavi project with your lit review content into NVivo, and then how you can work with those the codes you've had for your themes with the literature review you have to help you write the conclusion or that discussion section. And then how you can export that into Word and use Citavi again for reference management and citation. So now I'll go back to software. Now we have some context. So again, in NVivo, and I can go to import, and I can import bibliographical software like Citavi into NVivo. But before I do that, I want to show you what it looks like in Citavi. So I have a project opened already that I've been working with in Citavi. And Citavi has three main sections. So there's a reference section, which I'm in, that allows you to import all your references in different ways. And I'll show that in a second. And then it allows me to see all the content around the reference. So the authors, the title, where it came from, the periodical in this case, the page numbers. And then I can also read the actual article here too, to go through, and I'll show you how you can tag things that you find important to put into your outline. The next section is your knowledge section. So this is where you do build an outline. So for example, I'll just create a new category or a new subcategory. Just write changes here. So you could easily create top categories, subcategories, and even more to start that thinking about how your paper or your dissertation or your thesis is going to look. And then if I click on, for example, in this part, I have actual items that I have from the different references I read. So it's helping me organize all this. And then there's a task section where you can assign yourself tasks, or with Citavi, you can actually create it as a cloud project, and you can have your team members or colleagues work on this with you, and then you can assign them tasks. So just going back here, I just wanted to show to import with Citavi, you have many options. So you can import from other reference management programs like Mendeley RefWorks, EndNote. If you already have articles in those, so you don't have to recreate the wheel, you can bring in text files, PDFs, but you can also, if you have access to a database, in this case, I only have access to free databases like the Library of Congress or the British Library, but you can actually get into your organization or university's database and then bring in articles right into Citavi from there. And so when I'm in Citavi, I'm just going to change the view so it's easier for you to see the article here. So I can read through an article and start, and you can see I've done some of that already. And so here there's a paragraph talking about fisheries. So I can highlight that, and then I can decide, do I want to create this as a direct quote, or an indirect quote, or a summary, or a comment. So it's going to help me with some of that paraphrasing sometimes I have to do when I'm writing. And so it comes up, and this is the core statement. I can shorten that if I want. I can, in this case, it's an indirect quote. So, I would type in what I thought, why it was important. But what's really helpful is I can add this to my outline here. So let me see if I find no. So I'll put it in, let's say, I'll do coastal communities again. Click OK and save it. And now when I go to the knowledge item, I would see it there. So I could go through, I can also, you can see I can grab images in Citavi. And just because this is a shorter presentation, I won't show you everything, but you get the gist of it. And if you wanted to just start working with your lit review information here, you could actually export this to a Word document right from here. And you can see it comes in. I have a Citavi Word add-in Word. I can go to, I want to find the project I was in, so I have that information. And I can actually ask Citavi to bring in everything I had in the outline all at once, or I can pick what I want to come in. So you can see it's doing it there. So it's brought in everything. So it's like helping me with that first draft. You don't have a blank page ever again when you're working with Citavi. Would have definitely helped me. And at the same time, it's creating the citations based on the knowledge items I put in the outline, and it's building out my bibliography too at the same time. So I just wanted to show that to you. You can use Citavi like that with without even using NVivo. But where NVivo comes in to help you with, let me go back to Citavi. So I can also go and export. So I can pick all references, and one of my options is to export it to a file that NVivo can read. So that's what I'll do now. So I can come in here. I have my literature review, and I'm going to go to import and go to Citavi. And then I would go and find that project, and it will bring it in. I've already done that to save time. So all those articles are already in NVivo, as you can see here. So now once they're in NVivo, I can open them up and read through them and code them. So this is really looking at what, like we talked about what the expert said. So it's always easy to create codes in NVivo. So this is on blue economy. And so on. But with what Veronica was talking about, I just wanted to show you that not only the articles come in, but when you import from Citavi, you also get the reference information. So all that metadata that was in Citavi will also come into NVivo. So I have the date, publication, the name of the article, the authors, and so on. And that can be helpful later if you want to look across articles after you've done coding in them. But here with what Veronica was talking about, and this is how I used NVivo for my own dissertation. So I did use it to help me organize my lit review. So this was, I went through the articles and I coded them based on topics that were important to me with my lit review. So then if I, needed to write about communities, I can open up the code and I can see based on the authors what article talked about communities and what they said. And I can always get back to the original article in NVivo if I want to go read it. So that can be very helpful. And it highlights exactly where it was coded there. So you can do that with your literature, but then the findings, which Veronica was talking about, is all about your own themes. So in this case, I had gone through all my interviews and coded them. And that's where I came up with the key themes. So for example, if I open up community change here, I have a code that's showing me the sources that I brought in for my primary data, what they said. And so it's helpful. I can read through this to say, okay, what's important for me to write about in regards to those themes. I can always get back to the original source and see, in this case, it was an image, what it said, or why it was important to put in this code. And then what I did, and I'm calling it a conclusion. So I create a folder for my conclusions here. So with my dissertation, I had what the experts said in my literature review section of the coding, my own findings with the themes, and then if, conclusions or discussion area, I was able to basically, I copied, so in this case, just to make it clear, I created a code called change, conclusions. And I brought in what was said in the literature with change and then what I found in my own data. So what's nice is, for example, I'll just open up both of these codes because one of the strengths of NVivo is you can code on a code. So you don't have to go always back to the original source to do the coding. And I can start thinking like, okay, how are these? So this was my own data I coded. So I can go through and say, okay, this is important for the conclusion. So I can code it to the conclusion code. And then if there's an area with a lit review where they talked about that part where an expert was backing up or they weren't backing up what I was finding, I could also add that. And so then when I open up the conclusion code, it has everything I need right here to start writing more. And that's that analytical process. So this is one way you're going to create a code to help you think through it. But you also might, in NVivo has memos. And so under notes, and I created one here called change conclusions or discussion. And I did use the date time stamp, which I like using. Oh, I have to edit. There we go. And I can insert date time. I tend to do this, just helps me keep track of, my thoughts as I go. And this is part of the analysis process too, that Veronica was talking about, and that now even within NVivo, you can start thinking about how is this all working together for my findings and for my discussion. So you can just type in and go from there. Now, anything in NVivo can be exported. So for example, if you had a lot of analysis in this memo and you wanted to use it to start writing about this for your conclusion or discussion, you can export it to a Word document. But what I want to do here is I want to actually export this change conclusion code. So I'm going to export it, export the code. I do it to a Word document. Click OK. And so you can see here I have the Word document, but I still have that Citavi Word add-in, and I can now bring in the citations here, or maybe more information that I had in Citavi. So, maybe I want to bring that section so that I'm doing the citations here. I can add more knowledge items. So maybe in this section, let's go down here. you can see it here. I bring in an image I had in Citavi. So it's helping me now. I have the analysis, my own, what the expert said, my own data, and then I can use Citavi to help me bring in more information, but also build the bibliography and the citations too at the same time. So it really helps you with that writing process. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing now, and we can take questions. I'm sorry, I wasn't reading the questions as they came up. So
there are a few for you, Stacy.
Oh, okay.
I tried to address the ones for my part.
Okay, great. So let me so were there any questions that stood out to you for your presentation?
Yeah, I think one of the things is that difference between universities, right? Like, where should things go? And that's why I asked that initial question. Really find out from the get-go what your supervisor or chair or university requires, and to get the template from them so that you know from the get-go where things are supposed to go. Beyond that, the presentation still holds. The information still is what it needs to be. It just is in a different place. So keep that in mind. I did send in, or I did in the chat, I put in the template, the table that I showed, and then I provided a kind of a guideline for chapter 5. Traditional chapter 5. And then someone was asking for the timeline. And so I'll put that in right now while you're addressing a couple of things.
Great, thanks. So yeah, good questions. And I forgot to mention, which is my fault. So I'm just going to share my screen again quickly so it makes sense when I talk about this. So somebody asked with Citavi, will the knowledge items come into NVivo? And yeah, so these knowledge items with NVivo 14, that's coming out soon, we have much more integration with Citavi than we do now. So these knowledge items that you do have will actually come into NVivo as codes. So they'll actually be a folder that gets created, Citavi. I'm not sure. I think it's called like code, or just called Citavi, I think. So when it comes in, the Citavi knowledge items will come in as codes like you're seeing here, and they will be attached. The information will also be attached to the original references or PDFs. But they're putting in a separate folder because you might not want all of that in your regular coding. So you can pick and choose what you want to bring in. So sorry about that. I forgot to mention that because that's a really good point. So that will be a game changer to help people when they're using Citavi and NVivo together. And the key, somebody would talk about keyword function. Yeah. So just because of time, I didn't get into that, but you're correct. So another option here is I have the knowledge items, but I could also go where I think it's here. Groups, keywords. And those, I believe with the new integration, that's another option too. You can bring in the keywords and what you've brought into with keywords into NVivo too. I'm pretty sure about that. So thanks for those questions.
Stacy, did you see the one, what are the chapter tabs in Citavi?
Yeah, that was in the Word document. And we do, I'll put in a link. We have a longer demo of Citavi that will go into more of this. So chapters are based, I don't have any because I don't have any of this, but basically in Citavi, you can organize the knowledge items. So you can organize the knowledge items here into chapters. So you would just break it up. So with the let me go to knowledge items. So you can break this up, like insert a subheading so you can create chapters. And so that's what will show up there. But I'll put in the link in a second for a more robust demo of Citavi. Any other questions?
And then it said, how do you add Citavi into Word? Did you say that already? Did you cover that?
Yeah. So basically, it comes with the Word add-in. So, I mean, you could just open up a Word document. I did it. I exported from Citavi, but you could open a Word document. And as long as you just have to go to the Microsoft App Store to get Citavi, it's free, the Citavi Word add-in, and then it will show up in your Word document. And then when you click on it, it will take you to that Citavi pane that will then show you all your different Citavi projects, and you just click on the one that you want to work with that Word document.
Perfect.
And there are trainings, the website. So if I go, I think I have the website open here under resources. And if you go to support, there's a lot of great videos you can watch to help you get started. They're short, very helpful to help you learn it. I mean, I think that's a great way to learn. I'll just put this in the chat so you have how to access Citavi. Great. Any other questions? Any for you, Veronica, that you want to say? Sorry, I get.
No, you're good. Let me see here. There was a really good question about so if we're connecting to the literature, can I just paraphrase what I said in chapter 2? And I thought that was a great question. And the answer is no, don't just paraphrase. But at least if you know where the information is, that's good. What you can do is to highlight the information that's relevant to the conclusion that you are making, and then provide the methodological information. So methodological information includes like the sample, the location of the study, the type of data collected, the analysis, a theory, all that kind of good stuff that is different from what you did, or perhaps similar to what you did, but you found something a little different in your findings. So you really want to be intentional about what you tease out from other people's studies.
There's a question about Mac for Citavi. And so if for Mac, we have a Citavi Web that has the same features that I showed you with the desktop version. So you can use that, and I'm pretty sure for the Word add-in, you do need a Word document. So if you have a Mac, you would have to have access to Word. It's not on Google Docs like that yet, but it will. I'm sure they're going to work on that.
Okay, and then I did have a question I didn't get to answer fully because I wasn't sure about the question. So someone had asked, well, what happens if you have multiple authors in your own study? And how do you write that conclusion, right? You would still, instead of saying in this study, I discovered, it would be we discovered, okay? So you're including all of your authors, and nothing else really changes other than that. It could be that that's what separates you from other people and other researchers, that you had multiple people and that enabled you to, maybe collect more data or something like that. And that would be worthy of recognizing and how that kind of situates you differently from other people. So that's how I would do that.
Thank you. And I'm just answering a question in the chat about Citavi Web and its features. So they are continually adding features with Citavi Web to make it comparable. I think adding citation styles, I'll have to find out about that. But everything I showed you today is in Citavi Web.
Cool.
Question. Oh yeah, in Citavi you can work with other members on the same project at the same time. Yes, you can. So you can choose, even if you don't have Citavi Web, you can choose to create a cloud project, and then you can both go in and work in it. I've done it myself, it's a great way to collaborate. And then obviously with Citavi Web, you can do that too.
Yeah, and then Stacy, someone said that they weren't able to download some of the documents because of probably the mode that they were on. So I'll just make sure that I send those to you.
Yes, that's fine.
There were probably at least 4 documents
okay.
that I uploaded. And so we'll make sure that they get those.
Great. Yeah, that happens. Sorry, I don't know why with Zoom, not everyone can download things sometimes.
Yeah.
We did find out if you're on an iPad, you can't. You have to be on your computer to do it. So I'm trying to think. I put a link to Dissertation by Design in the Academic Writing Center too. And then I do want to just go through a few really quickly things.
Yeah, I could, if you while you're doing that, Stacy, for those of you who are looking at writing specific support, our Academic Writing Center is a great place to find that support. And if you have any questions about that, you can reach out to me and I'll answer any questions that I can. Thank you.
Great, thanks. So we do have a few more webinars. So we have actually Dr. Brown and Dr. Clark, who wrote the book on thematic analysis, presenting November 29th.
Literally.
So check that out. Yeah. And then also Edgar is going to be talking about narrative analysis. And we have Dr. Blake Curtis, who's going to be talking about how to do scientific writing. And this is just an idea of how all our software works together. So for literature reviews, we mentioned Citavi, which we showed. NVivo can help you. We have NVivo transcription. If you haven't checked that out, it's really good. I use it a lot. NVivo desktop to help you analyze your qualitative and mixed methods research. NVivo collaboration cloud to help you collaborate with NVivo. And then Citavi again to help you with writing. And we have courses. So if you want to learn how to use the software, we also have online courses. I'd love for people to join the community. I'll put that in the chat in a second. That's just a way for us to share our, these webinars with you. We have writing groups, we have user group meetings and that kind of thing. And I think, yeah, that's it. So I'll just stop sharing and see if there's any last questions before we end.
Link to register for the November 29th.
Yeah, I'll do that now. Thank you. So here's a link to all our live webinars. So you'll find that one because that's the next one coming up. And I'll put a link for the community too. Great. And I think anything else you see, Veronica? Thanks for helping.
Someone raised a hand just there. A lot of thank yous and thank you all so much for being here.
Well, thank you, Veronica, as always, pleasure.
Yeah. It's always great, Stacy. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye.